Well, so what was, I mean, having started your own business, what was the secret to your success?
Well, I promised God that if I was ever successful, He wouldn't have to come looking for me. And I wrote something down the other day that I heard on Robert Jeffress. He said, genuine faith always precedes abundant blessings. And when I was walking at night and praying, I did this a lot. I told the Lord if I was ever successful, He wouldn't have to come looking for me. So Chris and I have been, she's been my partner in everything, but we've been able to do a lot.
Hello and welcome to Eternal Echoes, where we ask older Christians to share wisdom and lessons learned on their walk of faith, remember and proclaim God's goodness and faithfulness, and seek to uncover eternal truths that can help guide future generations. My name is Katharine Rose, and I'm your host. Thank you for joining me. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Eternal Echoes podcast. So today we get the pleasure of hearing from John Linke. And I was introduced to John through a friend of mine, Ida, and Ida works at the retirement home that John lives in. And so, John, I am so grateful that you are here with us today, and I want to welcome you to the podcast.
Well, thank you. It's nice being here.
So tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I'm 75 years old. I grew up in Woodville, Ohio, northwest corner of Ohio, where the kids in the corn grow straight and tall, and we all got big ears. And it was a good childhood. I went to Bowling Green State University. I decided that in the first 2 years of college, I would just date around. And if I found a really nice young lady, I would be in a position to get serious. I met my wife in my junior year, about the third week, and it was love at first sight. She never took a second look. She should have. But anyhow, it was just, we moved to Cleveland. I got married. We started a family. We lived in New Orleans for 32 years. Hurricane Katrina came, and I said, I'm not going to be dodging storms anymore. So I, like Jed Clampett, picked up the pack and moved to Beverly. So Chris and I moved to North Carolina. And because our three daughters by this time, after Katrina, were all living here. Our daughters are 52, 49, and 43, 44, something like that. And so everybody was up here and the grandchildren. So it was just fun to be near them. And we have 6 grandchildren. And one of the grandsons just bought a really nice pickup truck. It's over 10 years old. But it is just, the wheels on it would cost more than what our first car was. But he wanted it. He saved for it. And I told him the other day, I said, life is a lot like a football game. I said, you're 16 years old and you're in the first quarter. But I'm 75 years old. I'm in the fourth quarter, and I'm running out of timeouts. So I said, you need to live right and enjoy, but fun. God's given you a conscience. Listen to it, because that's all this. It hasn't been for anything. It's to help make your life easier. And then the grandchildren's eyes always glaze over. But he's talking again. But big fight always at the holidays. Who gets to sit next to Grandpa?
They're all vying for your attention, I'm sure.
They picked their seats carefully.
Oh my goodness. So tell me, how long have you been walking with the Lord? What has your journey with God looked like?
Well, I was very fortunate. I grew up in this small town in Ohio, and we had a Lutheran church and another church, which I didn't know anything about, but we would every Sunday we would walk to the Lutheran church. We would live close enough for a while. And then we'd come home and have pot roast and potatoes and carrots and all that every Sunday. And the house always smelled great when we got home. But the church had a school. It was Solomon
Mm-hmm.
Lutheran School. And it was, so we just automatically went to school there. And so I give thanks regularly for the Christian education that I got because I really valued Christian education. And as our
Yeah.
kids came along, the three girls, it was important to me that we find a church that where they could go get a good Christian education. So my wife
Right.
and I literally sacrificed a fair amount so that they could go to uh, a Christian school, and it was just amazing how it worked out. They all got good Christian educations, kindergarten through high school. They all got
Wow.
college educations. They all got the
Wow.
weddings their mother thought they deserved, possibly the wedding that she should have had. But anyhow, and they've just all turned out good because one of the things I'm really feel blessed about is that they're all on a good path. Nobody's nobody's been a problem for us. Uh, and I can't say why. I just thank the Lord that they're on the walks that they're on, that they've been able to.
Yeah.
One of the girls told me, she said, "Don't worry about me and drugs, Dad. You put that stuff in my mind so deep that I couldn't possibly do some of these things." So I said, "Well, if it works, it works." It's kind of like
Yeah.
they check their oil regularly because when we'd be driving down the highway and we'd see a car along the edge of the road with the hood up and smoke coming out from under the hood, say, "You know why that happened? She didn't check her oil, Dad." So anyhow, it was just funny. But they remember those things. But I am so
Yeah.
thankful for the Christian education that I got as a young person. It just
Yeah.
it just made everything go so well, and it caused me to
Yeah.
pick a
Yeah.
woman out that was proper.
Yeah. Right. Right. Being equally yoked, I
Yes,
think, right? Yeah.
took the
Is
risk out.
important. Yeah. Um, and so tell me, I mean, what have you on your journey and throughout your life, what have you learned about God or maybe come to understand more fully about him in your own life and walk with him?
But I've learned that God wrote a pretty good book, and there's an awful
Mm,
lot of good information in there. And if you read it, it can shape you. And I think as a young man, it was a good thing going to a Christian school because I wouldn't have read that otherwise. I
yeah.
just wouldn't. And that's why
Yeah.
I think the Christian school was fantastic. But I learned that God really loves me and protects me. When I was
Mm,
16, on December 29th, 1965, I was taking a book back to the library, and the name of the book was The Road. And it was
mhm,
what the soldiers who killed Jesus, what they did with his few belongings after the crucifixion.
mhm,
And so I was taken back to the library. It was snowing. There was a dance coming up in a couple of days at the high school. I wasn't going, which was typical. I ran into a friend. We had another friend who had a barn, and we'd go out and play basketball out there. And so I said, "Well, you want to get a couple more guys? We'll go out and play basketball." So he said, "Yeah." And he and I worked in a grocery store as carryout boys. So the kid wasn't home, and we didn't go in their barn if they weren't home because if there was a fire or something, we didn't want to be responsible. So anyhow, we're driving back to town, and the guy that's driving turns out he has two gross of M80s. Now, an M80 is a very powerful firecracker, and this was right
mhm.
at uh, New Year's Eve. And
Okay.
I tell my kids always carry a nickel or a dime or a quarter call us if you're in a situation and you want to be rescued. So
Yeah.
anyhow, I didn't tell him to. He was lighting. In those days, you had a little wing vent on the window, and he was
Uh-huh.
lighting firecrackers and throwing them out the window. And one of
Oh
them
my gosh.
fell back into the car. So
Oh no.
I'm riding shotgun, so I lean over and I see we're going 35 miles an hour, and I got my new Christmas jacket on, and I'm not going to tear this up jumping out of a car. So
Yeah.
anyhow, I open my door, and I'm kind of leaning out, expecting the noise to dissipate.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that's not what happened. What happened is they all went off at once. I saw fire come between my legs,
Oh my gosh.
around me, over my head, and in just that split second, I was shot out of that car like a cannonball. And they said if I
Oh
hadn't
my god.
opened the door, we would have all been killed because the compression from the explosion would have killed us. So
Oh
anyhow,
my goodness.
at this point, I'm spinning in darkness, in the most comfortable, towards the most beautiful bright light. And I'm
Yeah.
just praying. And I said, Lord, if you need me, I'm yours. But this is going to kill my parents because they thought I was just taking a book back to the library. They didn't know I was going to go play
Yeah.
basketball. And we certainly didn't know anything about the firecrackers.
Yeah.
But I said, it's your call, but I'm ready. But, it would be difficult. So anyhow, the next thing I know, I wake up. The ambulance was there, and they had the other kids loaded in the ambulance, but they thought I was dead. They had me just covered up. So then somebody heard me cough. So they came and uncovered me. So I rode to the hospital with the ambulance driver with my eyes burned shut, and I'm trying to see what's going on, where we're going, what happened. And I
Oh my
wasn't all
gosh.
that alert, but anyhow, we got to the emergency room, and we get in there, and it turns out that my hip had been separated, had been pulled apart, yet somehow I was walking, and my eardrums were messed up. My hearing is bad, and
Yeah.
I got some good hearing aids now. But I'm in the emergency room, and they're cutting my clothes off, and I had an aha moment. When
Mm-hmm.
Mom said this could happen, thank heaven I was wearing clean underwear. Now, I don't know how clean it was after the explosion, but going into that explosion, it was clean. So whatever happened after that, but it was just, and then I was in the hospital for 6 weeks after that. But I just thank God that and what that bright light I was going to, I just, I don't know what kind of experience I had, but it was just so special. But there was no fear, none.
There was no fear. Well, I think it's amazing to hear you say in that moment, you kind of like you were aware and you prayed like, okay, God, if this is it, okay, but you know that you're praying that in that moment as you're like literally being exploded.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean that's just incredible. And did but you said, when you lost consciousness and passed out, I mean, do you remember anything from that time or is it all kind of
No, it was just, I
black?
just remember how beautiful and free it was to just be floating there. And then another time,
Wow.
about 2.5 years ago, I fell and broke my back. And I'd had a number of falls. Older people have falls, apparently. So I fall, and in the moment I fell, I heard the crack.
Mhm.
And I know it was the bone breaking in my back. And I just said, Lord, I know you're bringing people into the kingdom every day. That's me down front with my hand raised. Please bring me. I got everything taken care of for my kids. My Chris is provided for. Um, if you will, I'm ready to come. I'm really looking forward to it. And when I
Uh-huh.
tell this story to people, sometimes they say, "Well, you're not supposed to think that way." And I said, "Well, I've been going to church all my life, singing about one day going to be with Jesus. I don't want people praying, not now, not now." So uh, I'm ready. Let's get the show on the road. I'm not. If God left me to sit here and watch TV for the next few years, then I'm then that's That's going to be hard.
Well, but he must, I think, God has a purpose for you. As long as you have breath in your lungs, he has you here for a reason,
Everybody will tell me that God has a purpose for this. So I said,
But he
well, God, would
does.
you please step up and show me the purpose? Because I'm really getting tired of hearing it. So what I decided is we live in a retirement community of about, there's probably 500 apartments here and 900 people, and lots of people who are single. So because I'm not quiet and shy, I just enjoy meeting people. So I decided my
Yeah.
purpose was to meet people and see how they're doing and to feel our way along to where we can talk about Jesus, because most people here are
Amen.
75 years older. I'm like a kid, and uh, there's a there's a sea of blue rinse going out of this place on hair day. So but it's just been, I couldn't think of what else I could do, so I just throw myself into meeting people, and
But that's
everybody's
so
interesting.
beautiful. Yeah, well, everyone has a story, right?
Everybody.
Everybody has a story, and sometimes people just want to talk and don't have someone to talk to. So you are being that person. You are being that person, but it's also an opportunity, kind of like you said, to talk about Jesus, to share the gospel. And so to me, it sounds like that is your purpose right now.
I think you're right.
Yeah. And so God hasn't taken you yet, and he won't take you until it's time. But he still has that plan and purpose for you. And it sounds like it's a blessing for you, but I imagine it's also a blessing to the other people that you are talking to in your community.
Sometimes I have to tell them to be quiet. I said, I'm not done telling you about me, but I'm just kidding. But it is. There's a lot of heartbreak in a place like this. People who have lost uh, husbands tragically, who have lost children tragically, and
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a lot of pain. So it
Yeah.
is fun to just talk to people and to listen.
Yeah. And do you find are a lot of people there believers or not? And kind of, have you had an opportunity to talk about Jesus to people who maybe don't believe?
I find that many are in the Secret Service. They Yes, they believe,
What do you mean by
but
that?
they don't want to talk about it. It's,
No.
for instance, I have spent a lot of time reading and studying the Bible. So
Hmm.
when my wife when I retired, I was 50 years old, and I sold my business. And my wife was in a ladies Bible study at our church. It was a non-denominational group, and so I said, "Hey, can I come?" Because I noticed Chris was impacting her. I said, "Ladies, can I come to your group?" And they said, "Sure." So they eventually they changed it to the Monday morning Bible study. They took ladies out of it, but it was just fun to study the Word with them, and
Yeah.
to just get deeper into the Word. And it was just a good experience. But I spent a lot of time. I mean, I'm 50 years old, so I got time. So I spent a lot of time reading. I got a big, large print Bible with a
Yeah.
with a the explanation, and I forget what it's called. But
Hmm.
it was just interesting, and it just brought clarity to so many things I had heard about as a kid, and
Yeah.
uh, 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 and things like anxiety and just dealt with things that people are dealing with. So
Yeah. Yeah. And well, in all your reading and studying of the Bible, I mean, is there a particular book of the Bible that you've really enjoyed, or a story?
I really enjoy Paul's writings,
Mm.
and
Hmm.
I think it was Philippians 4:6 and 7. I don't have it in front of
Mm.
me right now, but be anxious about nothing, trust in the Lord.
Yes.
And that has been a thing that's overreaching for my wife and I. I have just a lovely
Yes.
wife. She'll probably come bursting in here in a second. And so I'll have to, but anyhow, It's
Yeah,
just
well, that's a beautiful verse.
as we,
I know that do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, present all your requests to the Lord. And it's beautiful.
when I started a business, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I kept losing jobs. Companies were bought out. It just was a mess. And I kept starting over with 25-year-olds whose wives were expecting their first baby. So I said, Lord, I'm walking at night and I'm praying. I said, Lord, I'm really tired of this. If you got a plan for me, could you kick it in? Because I'm way past ready. So anyhow, a couple of days later, it came to me. John, you've got a strong marriage, a wonderful wife. Your kids are doing fantastic. Do you think I can't handle your job? So I said, I had this idea. And so I told Chris, I said, and then our pastor gave a message that a turtle can't move till it sticks its neck out. And I said, man, that is what I needed to hear. So I stuck my neck out. I was 39. And just as I was turning 50, I sold the business, sold it for enough that I didn't have to work again. Like I said, I'm 75 years. That's 25 years. So it's been
Amazing.
good. But Norman Vincent Peale said, if you can conceive it and believe it, you can achieve it. So I named the business CBA Distributing for conceive, believe, and achieve. My logo was an oak tree, and the reason for that is the oak is a mighty. Let's see. A little acorn that stood its ground. Oh, I'm sorry. A little acorn that stood its ground. Yeah, it began from a little acorn that stood its ground. So anyhow,
I
I
love
had
that.
just
So what was, go ahead.
I just had so much motivation, and the idea is that the way that you get what you want out of life is to help others get what they want out of life. If each one of us pulls the next guy up, we all eventually get to the top. And it's not about
Amen.
becoming rich or important. What it is it's kind of about how you finish. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyhow,
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
well, in my 20s and 30s, I thought I was brilliant. And I couldn't understand why these companies weren't recognizing it. And I can look back now and I see that God was using that. I said one time, I just prayed. I said, why couldn't you have brought this along a little faster? You could have saved me a lot of time and anguish. And I woke up feeling that the reason, John, that you didn't have it any sooner is you would have probably screwed it up. So I brought you along slowly so that we could do it right. So that when you were 39, you were ready to start something. So
That's good.
it just worked out fine. And
That's wonderful. Well, and what was the business that you started?
I was in the drug business.
What was this grand idea that you had and that you started,
The last
developing?
company I worked for was called Serve a Portion, and they made all the
Okay.
little ketchups and mustards and jellies. I mean, mixed fruit jelly. Who's ever had a mixed fruit tree? I mean, but it's just okay. We got enough grape left, enough apple, and put it together. We'll just call it mixed fruit. So anyhow, when I was working for them, I'd go and stop at convenience stores, and I'd see they'd have these boards on the wall with 2 pill packs of Anacin, Bear, Tylenol, and Alka-Seltzer.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
they might be out of Alka-Seltzer and Tylenol, but they'd have 4 boards. They'd have lots of Anacin and Bear, but no
Mm-hmm.
Tylenol. So I said, there's got to be a
Mm-hmm.
better way to do this. So I came up with a small display about the size of this iPad where we could put 4 items on it. And then I went a little higher. We could put 6 items on it. But anyhow, I got people to represent me. First of all, I'd go and generate some business in a town. I'd get the distributor to put me in, and then I'd
Mm-hmm.
get a broker to represent me, and he'd call in the distributors and the chains, and it just kind of built. And but it was just the over the counter drugs, the sample And this was at a time when everybody, nobody had these things in their medicine cabinet. They were paying a buck for a Coke and a hot dog for lunch. And if they had a
Yeah.
headache, they just bought this, off a packet like this, for, 49 or 69 cents. Now I see them out there for almost $2. But
Yeah.
it was just an easy business. And the distributors loved me because I was
Mhm.
enthusiastic. And when they told me no, I said, "Oh, you just don't know enough." I'm saying KNOW. Uh, I got to come back and show you. I didn't say that at the time, but that was what my thinking was. So I'd go back another time and show them. And one guy said, "Linky, we didn't want to buy from you, but you're just too enthusiastic. We didn't have the heart to tell you no." So
You strike me as someone who wouldn't take no for an answer.
I didn't. It, it
But that's probably what made you successful though, you
I
know?
think I think.
Yeah.
Well, my dad's name was Marlin, but they called him Pete, and he was a talker boy, and so they called me Repeat, and it's just funny how it all worked out. But
Yeah. Well, so what was, having started your own business, what was the secret to your success?
well, I promised God that if I was ever successful, He wouldn't have to come looking for me. And I wrote something down the other day that I heard on Robert Jeffress. He said, genuine faith always precedes abundant blessings. Genuine
Mm.
faith precedes abundant blessings. And when I was walking at night and praying, I did this a lot. I told the Lord if I was ever successful, He wouldn't have to come looking for me. So
Mm.
Chris and I she's been my partner in everything.
Mhm.
But we've been able to do a lot. We've bought more computers for more schools, and things like that. And it's just, and the missions we support in Kenya, we've just
Mm.
had some fantastic opportunities, and we helped most of our money went to building a dormitory at a boarding school in Kenya, and they put up a
Wow.
plaque that said thanks to the generosity of. Didn't know they were doing something like that, but when Chris on one of her
Wow.
visits to Kenya, when they met Chris, she was like a celebrity because this was
Wow.
this was just a special thing that the kids really needed. Um,
Mhm.
the school started with three children 20 years ago who've lost their parents to AIDS, one or both parents to
Mm.
AIDS, and their relatives couldn't take care of them. And now we have 738 kids in this school, and it's just an
Wow.
amazing mission. And they can
Wow.
every letter, greetings in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. We get sponsors for the kids. It's just been phenomenal. So
Well, yeah, and what a
anyhow,
blessing.
I think the reason I was blessed is so that I could be a part of some of these things, because I'm not clutching
Yeah.
onto whatever we've got. We're sharing it, and
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Well, that's what I mean, and that's interesting because it sounds like God, entrusted to you this business and it prospered, knowing that, like you said, that you would be faithful and then be generous and give back. So again, genuine faith,
it's been
right?
such a blessing
Knowing your heart.
to
Yeah.
actually understand that, and I just feel good about what we've been able to do, and it's just
Yeah.
and this year, Chris, my wife, and two of our daughters and a granddaughter went on a mission trip, and it just
Mm.
changed everybody's lives because they see the need.
Yeah.
Now I can't go; I'm too big, but I, I, they also are a blessing who send. You know, some
Mm.
have to go and some have to send, and I missed my
That's right.
going period, but
But you're
I
sending,
can
and
send.
that's just as important.
We've sent a lot
Yeah.
of people.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's amazing. And so when did you start the mission work?
I would say 18 years ago. The headmaster they had a fundraiser, and the headmaster was so impressive. His love of Jesus was just incredible. And they
Mm,
let him talk at church for just a couple minutes. And after I heard him, then they said they were having the fundraiser the next night. I said, I gotta go to this. So
yeah.
it's a big church, and so I had to find the guy that introduced him, who's just a little gray-haired guy like everybody else there, but he had this tall black guy with him, so he was easy to spot. So I went and I
Hmm.
introduced myself, and the next night I went to the dinner, and it was just phenomenal to see how the kids were doing, and it was just.
Wow.
But that was about 18 years ago, and and
Wow.
and since then I've stood in the kitchen with the headmaster. Nathalie is his name, and held hands with a bunch of people as we were raising money. When he talked about the stripes on Jesus's back, I
Mm,
could see it. I could feel it. It was when he
mm,
prayed. I've never prayed as deeply and sincerely as he did, and it was so rewarding to be around a person like that, because I
yeah.
know, I'm hoping that someday I'll be in heaven, and we all got imaginations. Some young person will come up to me and say, "Hey, aren't you Big John?" And I'll say, "Yeah." And I'll say, "Well, I'm here because of you. I went to that school in Kenya." I say,
Hmm.
"Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice to
Yeah.
meet you. Glad you're here." So
Yeah.
I'm not investing so much in the day to day that the kids get food and teaching, although that's what they're getting.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
investing in the long term. I want to see them turn out to be good mothers, good fathers,
Yeah.
good husbands, and good nurses, good teachers. And I mean, we
Yeah.
want to, and that we can see that part of Kenya is changing because these kids are performing well in school, and it's changing the
Yeah.
way they live.
That's amazing. And that's amazing. And I mean, the to your point, long-term impact of that and the trickle down effect, you're changing generations, right? And so that's beautiful. I mean, what a blessing, and to know the impact that you're having in that area of the world. That's truly amazing. Well, what would you say, what's one of the most important lessons the Lord has taught you over the years?
Well, I would say to listen, to trust, and to believe. You know,
Mm,
if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. But
yeah.
pray about things before you do them. It's
Mm,
an awful lot of prayer went into. I had been praying about my business since I was 20 years old. Uh, so that was almost 19 years. But I knew I wanted to have a business. I knew how I wanted to run it and the type of people
yeah.
I wanted. I just didn't
Yeah.
uh, have a product. And then all of a sudden it came to me. But I'd been forming this whole thing in my mind for
Wow.
almost 20 years. And then when the opportunity came, is but hindsight is such a wonderful thing. I can see now, I can look back and see that God was with me the whole time. I just
Yeah.
wasn't always perceptive. So
Right. Well, and it sounds like he was preparing you. It was a time of preparation, and then to finally get to the point where it's like, okay, ready to go. But I want to go back to kind of what you said about praying before making decisions, because I think it can be we can be so quick to act, so can you kind of elaborate on just the importance of that?
yeah, as I said earlier, I think there's a lot of guidance comes from the Bible. And,
Hmm.
the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And I
Yeah.
really think that you're able to make better decisions if you're in the Word. Now, I've
Yeah.
been going to church since I was 2, and
Hmm.
I asked the pastor one time. I said, I'm in a Bible study, and these guys, we keep having a guy that'll say that, "Oh, I came to the Lord when I was 26. It was on January 15th, 1981. I didn't have that kind of stuff, so I said, "Am I less saved than these guys? Because they got the smack you in the head moment, and I don't have a
Right.
smacker." So I said, "I just
Yeah.
grew up in a good home with good people, and have always believed." So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I understand. I understand that. I think everyone's story is unique, and some people do have that moment where it is a true come to Jesus moment, and then others it's almost like from the beginning, it's just you believe and and you trust, right?
yep,
So what would you say your biggest challenge has been in your walk with God?
staying true to what I've told you, because sometimes you sometimes you get a sometimes you can try to get ahead of God, and that's when things don't work so well. And being
Yeah,
patient was a
being patient.
hard thing. I really wanted to get going, and
Yeah,
um, I would say that being patient and just trusting.
yeah,
And now I
yeah,
can look back and I can see
yeah,
how God has worked in everything. But at the time, it's
yeah.
kind of, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, speed it up.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and I guess, that's another question is, when you started your business, did you kind of struggle with that, you wanting things to, move along faster and faster? How did you work through that and stay patient in that?
I just kept working. I was,
Yeah.
I just had a, I just knew it was going to work. I knew my
Yeah.
motivation was right. Uh, I knew I had a tremendous idea. I was getting
Yeah.
affirmations of that. So I just stayed with it, and
Perseverance,
it really
perseverance, right?
was because I knew that
Yeah.
God loved me, and I knew it wasn't about getting rich. It was about uh, doing some good along the way. And
Yeah.
I just saw something from the high school that the kids went to the other day. That I haven't had a kid in high school in 25 years, but they still come for money. And
Yeah.
uh, I'm just so thankful for the education the kids got. That but slow down and trust and believe. God has a
Yeah.
plan for your life, but it's a lot easier to pull a rope than it is to push a rope. And
Yeah.
if you just hang in there, things work out. But you just have to
Yeah.
keep doing the right things right, and things will take shape for you.
Yeah, and I think you had hit upon something too, which I think is important, is not, again, not going ahead of God, and that's where that sort of patience is, but not running ahead of him, but just staying grounded and coming back, reining yourself in and being patient
Right.
and trusting, like you said, which can be, I mean, it's easy to say, but really hard to do, I think, at times. Um, well, before I ask you, the final kind of two questions I always ask at the end, is there anything else on your heart that you wanted to share?
Uh,
Hmm.
I told somebody one time, it's not original with me, I'm sure. I'm just a collection of things I've heard, but it's uh, life is like a book, and we may have some sad or bad chapters in it, but we know it has a happy ending because we know the author, and that makes all the
Yeah.
difference in the world. So, and eventually we
Amen.
get to meet the author, and that sounds good to me.
Amen. Amen. So I wanted to ask final two questions. So the first is, what is your favorite passage of scripture or life Bible verse and its significance to you?
I would go with
Does any
the Philippians 4, 6 and
Yeah,
7.
yeah. That's one of my favorite ones too. And then the final question I always ask guests is, in Jeremiah 6:16, it says to stand at the crossroads and look and ask for the ancient paths where the good way lies. And so I always ask in a couple sentences, where do you say the good way lies?
Well, I think the good way lies in following what you learn from the Bible. The world isn't going to show you the good way. Just follow where God leads you. I always pray for the God. I pray for God to help them accept whatever they've got going on. I said, whatever your will is, but just keep them on the path you've got them on, and help them to be smart enough to stay on it.
Yeah. And I love that you said too, it's the good way is not the world's way, right? There's a big distinction between God's way and the world's way. And we're to be in the world, but not of it, right?
Yeah.
Well, John, thank you so much. I've so enjoyed this and getting to hear a little bit more about your own journey, and I'm just grateful for everything you shared with us. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, it was fun talking to you. Thank you much.
Thank you so much for listening to the Eternal Echoes podcast. If your soul was nourished in any way by today's episode, I'd be so grateful if you share it with others, share it on social media, or take a quick moment to leave a rating or review. Also, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Eternal Echoes Ministry. Thank you for joining me, and may God bless you today and always.